All right, we're working on this foldable that says compound inequalities. So the first box over here is showing and inequalities. So let's take a look at what it means. It says that we're looking at x is greater than 2 and x is less than or equal to 5. So let's go ahead and first, let's graph what it would look like if x is greater than 2. So I'm going to go ahead on this number line. I know I'm going to be using the numbers 2 and 5. So I'm going to go ahead and lay it out all the way to 5. So x is greater than 2 has an open circle at 2 and points to the right. Now let's do the same thing. I'm going to lay out my number line from 2 to 5. So x is less than or equal to 5. Let's graph that separately. Put a circle on 5. It's a closed circle because it's less than or equal to, and it points to the left. All right, so now what we're doing today is compound inequalities. They're going to have an and or an or word between them. So what that means when we're doing compound inequalities is you're talking about if it's and, it's the space they share. So if you look at this, the top one, I'm going to highlight real quick. You don't have to though if you want to. The top one goes from 2 to 5. And on, and the bottom one starts at 5 and goes back to the left. But if you see where I've highlighted, that's the portion that they share, they have in common. So when it's an and, we're like, okay, what do they have in common? So if I combined those, they had an open circle at the 2 and a closed circle at 5, and where they would essentially overlap, the part that they have in common, is connecting between 2 and 5. All right, let's look down at the bottom and let's do an or, and then we're going to practice. So when it says or, that's a little different. So remember, and, if you notice, it was something where it connected like that. That was and. Ors are the opposite. Ors are always going to point away from each other. They can be open or closed circles, doesn't matter, but they are going to point in opposite directions. Let's look at how. Y is less than or equal to -2. Let's go ahead and just label this -2, -1, 0, 1. I'm going to go ahead and do that on all 3 number lines. All right, and the reason I chose to go all the way up to 1 is because I saw that the next inequality used 1. Okay, so y is less than or equal to -2. That's a closed circle at -2, and less than or equal to points to the left. Now let's graph the next one. Y is greater than 1. So it's an open circle at 1 and greater than points to the right. So when you combine them onto the same graph, they don't have any overlap. So when they combine, it just looks as if you place them both on the same number line. And I can tell that it's an or because ors point in opposite directions, just like the graph does shown here. All right, let's do some more practice. So we have in this inside of the foldable, this is the top row. The written statement says, I am thinking of a number that is greater than -8 and less than or equal to 4. So it's definitely an and. So we're going to write that there. Now, it's going to include -8 and 4. So I'm going to go ahead, and I personally am just choosing to go by 4s here. And that's going to be my graph. Now it said x is greater than -8 and x is less than or equal to 4. So that's it in writing. Let's go ahead and graph that. So it's greater than -8. That's an open circle at -8, and greater than goes this way. It's less than or equal to 4. That's a closed circle at 4, and less than or equal to goes that way. So then because it's and, you know that they should just connect. Now, let's look at how we write these together. When it's and, you can write them together. And what I mean by that is put your -8 first. That's the number farthest on the left of the number line. Then your variable, then your 4. So I'm writing these two numbers right here in number line order. So now if you look at this symbol right here, x is greater than -8. That inequality is open towards the x. So if we're going to rearrange the order, it still needs to be open towards the x. So what I just wrote here is actually the same as the other highlighted spot. And I would highlight too just to show yourself what we're thinking. So those are the same statements. There's nothing different about those because you can see that the opening is towards the X in both places. So it's really just written backwards, but the meaning is the same. So then let's highlight over here. So now we need to recreate this. So the blue needs to come down here. So notice, if you look at that inequality symbol right here, it is open towards the 4. So we're going to make sure it's still open towards the 4. So right down here, this is how we write an AND inequality. And we'll see more on this foldable. Let's go ahead and check out the next one. It says, I am thinking of a number that is at most 0 or at least 2. So it's definitely an or. So now we know it's going from 0 to 2. So I'm just going to put my number line. So at most 0. All right, so that means it could be 0 or less. So that tells me less than or equal to. When it says at most 0, that means it could be 0 or less. At least 2 means it should be 2 or more, so greater than or equal to 2. So if you look at what that means, less than or equal to 0 goes this way, and it's a closed circle. Greater than or equal to 2 goes this way. It's also a closed circle. And that is an or, and you can tell the graph points in opposite directions, which is good. Now right over here, I can't write this any other way. That is my answer. And you can combine into one big inequality, or you just have to leave with the word or. All right, let's try another one real quick. It says, I am thinking of a number that is more than 0 and less than 10. So it's definitely an and. So it's more than 0. That's greater than 0. It did not say equal to. More than means above 0. And it has to be less than 10. So now I'm just going to go by 5s here. I don't want to put too many numbers on my number line. So it says more than 0. So it'd go this way. I'm not going to keep the arrow on there, but that's essentially what it would look like. Less than 10 would be an open circle at 10 and go to the left. And then where they are going to overlap, they'll connect. They kind of look like a drawing. It's always going to be 2 circles with a line in between, and the circles can be open or closed depending on the symbols. All right, so now what I think is the hardest part is right here. We need to draw them in number line order. So the 0, then the X, then the 10. So if you look at this, X is greater than 0. The symbol, the opening, is towards the X. It opens towards the X. So if I draw it like this, that opens towards the X. Now let's look at the other one. So X is less than 10. So I need to draw that right here. The opening of that symbol between X and 10, it's open towards 10. So it stays open towards 10. And that is how I write them together. Okay, so I want you to decide first of all if it's an and or equation. All right, it is or, says right here. So now a number that is fewer than -6 or no less than -3. This negative right here is a little hard to see. I'm just going to draw it in there. No less than means -3 or bigger. So that's greater than or equal to. It is an or, so I can't combine them. That's my written form. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go -5, -4, -3. All right, so less than -6 is there. It's an open circle. Greater than or equal to -3 is right there. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and have you guys finish 5 and 6, and then I will post a picture of what the ending should look like. All right, this would be row 5, so go ahead and pause and make sure you have it filled out correctly now. All right, this is the last row of the foldable, so go ahead and pause the video. Make sure that you have it filled out correctly, and if you have any questions, be sure to let me know.